really hard to say exactly how many times we have come close to a thermonuclear war because it depends on what you call close. If we're talking about an incident between military clashes that could have escalated to that, or just to the point where the launch codes were starting to be initiated and stuff like that. If we're talking launch codes initiated and stuff like that, several times, probably a few dozen times. And there's probably a whole bunch of times that are just not known. One incident in 1962, a black bear climbed a fence and a bunch of Delta Darts were ready for takeoff with nuclear payloads. Canada, we used to fly the Starfighter not as an actual fighter, but for nuclear payload delivery. We didn't have any nukes, but with the joining of the United States Air Force, they would have provided the boom maker underneath the belly of the aircraft, and we would have done a nuclear strike. Joint nuclear strike. So, the delivery systems were there. They were ready. There was computer glitches that, a flock of geese nearly triggered a thermonuclear event. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. Now, there's an interesting thing is, what is the probability of a nuclear exchange? Well, it depends on this. Let's say you're the only person in the world with a car. Your likelihood of getting into a car accident is very, very low with another car, right? But let's say there's two cars on the road. Well, that's a possibility. Your odds might still be astronomically impossible. You're more likely to win the lottery. Now let's add 200 cars on the road. Okay, now let's add 20 million cars on the road. Eventually cars are going to start ricocheting off each other. So your probability goes up as, you make it impossible for it to be impossible. And it's the same with a nuclear event. It's something that, if you just add in all the times that have come close to miscalculating, it's just one fragile miscalculation. We say, yes, but our computers are so much better now. One incident where they nearly ended up launching on each other was a training program that was put in the system to, as a training program. Nobody knew it was a training program. They thought it was the real deal. They thought the Russians were actually launching. At one point, Boris Yeltsin, on a day he was actually probably just hungover, not drunk, the Russians detected, they had a problem. They detected a false detection, and it looked like the United States was launching on them. And for whatever reason, he decided not to launch. They were ready to go. They opened the nuclear football, and they were ready to launch. So, we're only going to have so many of those false alarms before, I think when the launches do start, people are not going to know exactly why. It's just going to be, they've launched, mad, mutually assured destruction is going to go in. This is why we need to be, it's the most uncomfortable topic that you can pick up. Some of my friends, if I even met, they won't even ask me about it. They're quite well aware of, the videos I make and stuff like that, and they won't even ask me about it. And when I do start explaining to people what's going on, you can just see the fear in their face. They don't want to hear it. They'd rather not know. But the problem is if you're lucky, you're caught in the blast. If you're really unlucky, you will survive the event. You know what I mean? Because people don't understand what the effects of radiation poisoning is, and it's all really relative to how close you are to it. Is how potassium iodine is only going to do so much for you. Think about it this way: you're basically going to melt from the inside out. Is what's going to happen to you. Very, very extremely painful way to die. Chernobyl, we'll use Chernobyl for example. There's not a single person that survived Chernobyl that's alive today, that worked at the plant, that tried everything in their power to, stop the meltdown. All those people are dead, and they died. The one guy, I think his record was 2 weeks. He lasted 2 weeks. We're going to go to Fukushima, Japan, which is still a bigger disaster than they're letting on. Guys went in, they volunteered, okay? They volunteered to go shut down the reactor. They walked in those guys are dead. They died. Even their anti-radiation chutes, they were being burned through the suits. It was a brutal way to go. Very brave men. They tried their best, but it still wasn't enough. You know what I mean? So, that's how bad that stuff is. Just being, I think something like 400 millirads, after 2 minutes, you're walking dead after that point. And the other problem is that once you're contaminated, you can't go near anybody because you'll get them contaminated. So you can see what I mean. Like if you're lucky, you get killed in the blast. It's just and this is a nightmare. So this is why I make these videos. Are they doom and gloom? Well, actually no, they're not, because the fact that you are able to be sitting there listening to the video means we still have time. How much time? That we don't know. Again, to me, the hour is short. I'm seeing stuff going on in the world now that is escalating, all the missile systems going in. Again, there's just so much to cover. China's building up its nuclear force, exposing its, to the world, or showing to the world, okay, here's our new stealth aircraft, here's our new aircraft carrier, here's the Dongfang 31 missile that goes Mach 7 to Mach 10. Here's our, nuclear weapons program. They're really trying to tell us the message that, back off, But the problem is they're empire building. Therefore, when they're empire building, it's only a matter of time before, between them and Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, Australia, they're going to be the first to fight. And, of course, the United States, and I'm sure Canada will get pulled in on it. They're going to be the first to fight the Chinese. Problem is the Chinese will go to a launch before they'll, numbers-wise, we can't take them numbers-wise. But one thing we can do is take them technology-wise. They're still not quite up to par to the Americans, but the Americans are losing that edge. They are losing that edge. As far as elite forces go, the Chinese don't really have many more elite forces than, say, like Canada. They don't have that much. But in just regular, kind of a little bit outdated equipment, again, you combine every other military in the world, and manpower is almost impossible to stop. Yes, the United States has the biggest budget, but they don't have the most manpower. China has the most manpower, because you have to, understand, like, all the conscripts, all the people that, okay, well, they're no longer in military service, but they'll be pulled into service. So you have, 2 billion, 200 million people, or whatever the population of China. Almost half of them, men and women, have combat training. It's a communist country, right? So that's the deal. They just have a huge military surplus, which they would pull into reserve. So they're empire building, meaning they're trying to claim more and more of the ocean. Okay. Now, this is not new in history. China did that many times. China was the world's superpower for thousands of years. They were, and then they kind of lost it. They've only lost it in the last few hundred years, really. Where they've kind of got knocked off the rocker a bit. But they were, they controlled an awful lot, it's just, this is what world history will teach you, is that, there's always been power struggles. Africa, well, it's a lost cause. It's a lost cause. There's not a single country here that can get out of what it's in. There's just too much corruption. There's just too much tribal wars. And then plus, with all the empire building, China, the United States, Europe, everybody's going in here. Mali. Okay, why did Canada go to Mali? A lot of people don't realize why we went there. Because we have gold mines here. Canada's one of the number one mining countries in the world. We have mining projects all over the place. We are a resource-based country, but we take it to the extreme. A lot of people don't realize that we take it to the extreme. We are number one in diamond mining, number one in gold mining. We're number one in just about everything, in the sense of who's doing the most. That's why we went to Mali. I mean, we've never backed up France on anything, and we go to Mali to help out France on a whim. No, we went there because we were protecting our mining. That's what we're protecting. So you have all these people here that have been fighting each other over tribal wars, now have to compete with losing their resources from, wherever. It's already happened to this country, it's all communists and dictators down here. These people are, again, you're starting to see people, rise up a bit, but it's not that it's a little too late. It's just the damage is already done, so the repair is going to take forever. But these people, again, you don't have to really worry about them. You don't really have to worry about these people. Even the Middle East, you don't really have to worry so much. It's them. Those, and of course, there. It's what are they trying to do? Again, it's minority groups, basically government, that are forcing, again, I've always said, here's your government and your officials, here's the people that are their henchmen, and then there's the rest of the world. You know what I mean? If we actually had we don't have democracy anywhere on the planet. We never have, really. The illusion of democracy, sure, but when people understand what democracy is, they understand that, okay, well, it's going to be a handful of people that's going to dictate whether we go to war. Same with World War I, World War II. And it's not the elites that are going to go to fight. The difference now, though, is, again, the idea, the idea that these elites are building bunkers like it's going out of style, that they're putting, seed vaults up in the Arctic and stuff like that. All this kind of stuff, like really doomsday stuff. They know something's coming because they're planning it, So it's just a matter of time before that actually happens. So, again, how close will we get to it? It's the idea is to not trigger the war before they're ready, which, there is ways out of this, and I do offer solutions. The solution is, okay. I'll get to it in a second here, but the solutions are actually a lot easier than people think. Is number one, we have to take control of the banks again. The Iceland solution is a good start. It's not the absolute, but it's a good start. Number two, we have to throw the corrupt politicians and corrupt bankers in jail. Number three, we need transparency within our government. Not just government that says we're going to be transparent, but actual transparency. We need government accountability. We also need, and this is the biggest one, this is the hardest part to accomplish, is, again, here's that small group of elites that think they're better than everybody. Here's all the people. It's these people in between that are going along to get along. TSA agents is a good example. Law enforcement, military. These are the people that you have to reach. These people don't matter. It's these people have to reach. They have to go with what a Canadian once said: "The people are the police are the people." Sir John Peel, and that's true. So you need to get your police and military on board with civil rights and liberty, but most importantly, the idea of getting rid of the most terrifying weapons out there. Start with the nukes, work your way down. It doesn't have to happen overnight. It just has to happen. Because again, and same with all nuclear power. Humanity is not responsible enough for human power, for nuclear power, and we're also, Mother Nature's too unpredictable for nuclear power. We're still, Fukushima. Think about Japan. It's been nuked 3 times. That's not good for Japan. You know what I mean? But yet the people are strong and they still survive. But look at the misery they're going to have to suffer through for another 50 years. You know what I mean? And Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It's still, people still have birth defects there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where we're at. And yes, we've been close many times. And that meter's counting down to zero as every little piece of the chessboard moves. When you see more warships getting closer to smacking into each other, like we just seen a couple of weeks ago, when B-52s are, going into China's airspace, when China's claiming more airspace, all of a sudden decides, well, this is now our sovereign land. Now let's go back to Canada. Again, this is why we're going to be fighting Russia. And this is why, you people in Halifax, you need to get cracking on those ships. And we also need submarines. The thing is that we're going to be, we right now, this is kind of what our claim is. Arctic sovereignty, use it or lose it. They want some of it. They say, no, this is part of their shelf. We're saying, no, this is a part of our shelf. But we're basically making this claim, this whole claim here. And there's the resource. It always comes down, all wars are always about resources and ideologies. So right now, this is going to be about resources. Right now, we're using the diplomatic way of doing it. The UN. I hate the UN. Why? Because they're the most corrupt organ. Because even the United Nations, you have Saudi Arabia on the United Nations. You've got Korea on the United. You've got China on the United. You've got all the people that do not deserve to be there are there. You had Saddam Hussein on the freaking UN. It's so corrupt that it's no good. But in this case, we're using them to say, okay, we're going to use them as the referee saying, all right, here's our scientists, the Harper government. They've put tons of about 40 different areas where we researched just to say, yes, this is a part of our continental shelf. The Russians are like, okay, well, if the scientists, say, and even in Greenland, they say there's no use getting into a fight over this. There's no use getting into a war over this. So they're saying, let's let the scientists decide where the lines actually are. And the Russians are like, okay, that's fine. We'll agree with that. But just in the meanwhile, let's put some more, let's open up some of those old Soviet bases and, make our presence known in the Arctic. Let's put a flag at the bottom of the ocean. Let's get some more submarine patrols in there. Let's get some more warships in there. Yeah. So we see we're just a few years away from what's going on here. That'll explode before this will. I don't want to fight the Russians. I'm pretty sure the Russian people don't want to fight the Canadians. But again, we have, a handful of people that are, so we have to get that big stand down from law enforcement, military, in this case, navies. Again, it's just going to, plus we're also going to have the Americans in on, they're already there. They're the ones doing the patrolling now because we don't have enough ships to do it. We're up there, but we're just, we have 3 warships. The Russians have we have about 30 warships all in. We have 3 destroyers, and the Russians, they have approximately 200 vessels ready for mostly submarine fleets, and it's the submarine fleets that you really have to worry about. So, but Canada, the one thing about Canada is we're very underestimated in a lot of things. Technology-wise, we're quite brilliant. I mean, we're mapping the ocean floor up there with state-of-the-art technologies. That's where our technology boom is really in this region of the world here, or region of the country, Alberta and stuff like that. But up in the Arctic, off here, there's a lot of technology that people just don't know, and Canada's kind of investing in that again. So, such as underwater drones and stuff. That's coming, because that's how we're going to keep the Russians out, so to speak. And the Chinese will be in on that too. They're already interested in this, not just for trade, but I mean, they own half of every country out there anyway. So again, the recipe is there. We just have to turn on the stove, and we've come close so many times. So I guess I'm going to leave it at that. I'll just do one more follow-up video, and that's it. Okay, on record, it's really hard to say exactly how many times we have come close to thermonuclear war because it depends on what you call close. If we're talking about an incident between military clashes that could have escalated to that, or just to the point where the launch codes were starting to be initiated and stuff like that. If we're talking launch codes initiated and stuff like that, several times, probably a few dozen times. And there's probably a whole bunch of times that are just not known. Some of the one incident in 1962, a black bear climbed a fence, and a bunch of Delta Darts were ready for takeoff with nuclear payloads. Canada, we used to fly the Starfighter not as an actual fighter, but for nuclear payload delivery. We didn't have any nukes, but with joining of the United States Air Force, they would have provided the boom maker underneath the belly of the aircraft, and we would have done a nuclear strike. Joint nuclear strike. So the delivery systems were there. They were ready. There was computer glitches that, a flock of geese nearly triggered a thermonuclear event. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. Now, there's an interesting thing is, what is the probability of a nuclear exchange? Well, it depends on this. Let's say you're the only person in the world with a car. Your likelihood of getting into a car accident is very, very low with another car, right? But let's say there's two cars on the road. Well, that's a possibility. Your odds might still be astronomically impossible. You're more likely to win the lottery. Now let's add 200 cars on the road. Okay, now let's add 20 million cars on the road. Eventually cars are going to start ricocheting off each other. So your probability goes up as, you make it impossible for it to be impossible. And it's the same with a nuclear event. It's something that, if you just add in all the times that have come close to miscalculating, I mean, it's just one fragile miscalculation. I mean, we say, yes, but our computers are so much better now. One incident where they nearly ended up launching on each other was a training program that was put in the system to, as a training program. Nobody knew it was a training program. They thought it was the real deal. They thought the Russians were actually launching. At one point, Boris Yeltsin, on a day he was actually probably just hungover and not drunk,